Hi, everyone. This is Kevin again. Um, I know that this particular screen looks very apocalyptic. What is the future of America? Um, so many of us, I think, have been watching, and we're weary from watching, but we've been watching and waiting, thinking this was our year to go home, believing that this was the time frame because the time frame of 2025 to 2032, uh, 70th week of Daniel, just simply made sense, especially concerning the midpoint of it being at the time when the Apophis asteroid would be approaching Earth and possibly be causing the wormwood prophecy to be fulfilled. Um, but I've come across some more information lately, and I came across by accident a man named Phillip Barnett. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He was a pastor. I think before that, actually, just a missionary, but then a pastor for probably over 20 years, I think, in Ukraine. And while he was there in 2007, he had a series of dreams and visions. And one of the dreams he said he had was, which is the first one, I think, actually was a repeat of the same one he had had in the 90s, like around 1999, he thinks, that he didn't wake up and write it down and he forgot about it. So when he had it again in 2007, he went ahead and got up and wrote it down so he wouldn't forget. And he called that first dream, he called it the Azovmena uh, prophecy or Azovmena dream. So it's Azovmena. And what it had to do with was a future war that was going to happen between Russia and Ukraine. And at that time, no one thought that that would ever happen because Ukraine and Russia were allies. Ukraine and Russia were previously part of the Soviet Union, and they got along fine. And then came along, in 2014, there was this rift that happened, and the president of Ukraine was basically kicked out, and someone got put in his place that was, very anti-Russian, and that kind of got started. And then we see in 2022 this invasion that happened into Ukraine by Russia. And so I think that's what he saw in these dreams. He saw that happening. At the time they thought he was crazy. He told his church exactly what was in those dreams. And he said the Lord told him to tell them because nobody else, he had given it to other people and they wouldn't do it. And he said, I want you to do it, and I want you to tell it exactly the way I said, the way I told you. Don't take anything away from it, and don't add anything to it, and then I will give you more. Um, then he actually had more prophetic dreams and visions that had to do with a future war beyond that would happen between the United States and Russia. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. I'm going to show you this, but I just want to give you a kind of a summary first of what happened. Basically, that's going to be an event that's going to happen about 2 months after the rapture happens. It's going to happen on the 11th of November of whatever year it's going to be. But he was told that it would be on the 11th of November. That's when it starts. And that's what kind of what he would refer to as being in the Bible as the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39, that particular battle of Gog and Magog. Okay. We've always wondered, like, where's America in the Bible? We don't see it, right? Some people think they see it in I think Revelation 18 with Mystery Babylon the Great. But he pointed out in a interview that he doesn't believe that America is Babylon the Great, and there's reasons for that because of the description that's given. But one thing's for sure, this would be a good reason of why we don't read about anything to do with America, because what he saw happen, and I'm going to read it here in a little bit, was basically 18 cities in America are going to be hit by nuclear weapons. And 8 nuclear weapons are going to be fired at eastern Ukraine and Russia by the United States. And so his second prophecy that he has talked about, he just revealed it. The Lord wouldn't let him reveal it until August of this year. He revealed it then. It was called the Remnant of America. And in the Remnant of America, he basically talks about this very thing, and I'm going to read some of it. And also then goes on to say where the safe areas are going to be in America after that people can go and actually live, those that survive, where they can actually go and live and possibly plant certain crops and stuff to survive during the 70th week of Daniel. Now, I know that according to Revelation 13, we know that by the midpoint, when the mark of the beast is put into place, and also you have to worship the image of the beast, that those that refuse to do so, those that are tribulation saints, are going to be beheaded. We know that. And that's, I think, going to be true anywhere in the world. So let me go to the Remnant of America and start reading to you what cities those are going to be affected. Okay, let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is in the PDF format. This is I had to it's kind of hard to find. I tracked it down. There's also on video where he actually in a particular church gives this presentation. But this is the written down version. There is a natural, spiritual, and prophetic side to all the feasts of Israel, to the 7 major feasts, and to the smaller feasts. The prophetic side of the 3 major spring feasts, Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits, were all fulfilled the spring Jesus died. Prophetically, we are now living under the summer feast of Pentecost. As the prophetic side of the 3 spring feasts had to occur in the spring of the year, or the prophetic side of the 3 fall feasts has to occur in the fall of the year. The 5th feast, Rosh Hashanah, the 6th feast, Tabernacles, and the 7th feast of Atonement, are fall feast, and the prophetic side of these feasts must be fulfilled in the fall of the year, just as the prophetic side of the spring feast had to be fulfilled in the spring of the year. The 5th feast, Rosh Hashanah, which is the Feast of Trumpets, prophetically represents the rapture of the church. It is the next feast to be fulfilled after the fulfillment of the prophetic side of the Feast of Pentecost is completed. In other words, he's saying Pentecost, from the start of it to the end of it, 2,000 years, it's been being fulfilled through the church age. Okay? The 7 days of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is the 6th feast, represents all raptured saints of God who will tabernacle in heaven during the 7 years of the tribulation period, observing how the Israelites needed to tabernacle in tents for the 40 years in the wilderness after God brought them out of the Egyptian bondage. Now I'm going to stop right here and just say that I'm not completely in agreement with that, because you're taking it out of order. I think that the Feast of Atonement is a fulfillment of the end of the tribulation period, or when the second coming happens. When Jesus comes back at the second coming will be the Feast of Atonement, and then the Feast of Tabernacles looks to me to be fulfilled during the millennial kingdom. But he believes it's representing the 7 years while we're in heaven with the Lord. The 7th and final feast, the Feast of Atonement, represents the 1,000 years millennial reign of Christ. See, I think it's the opposite. It's not, so the Feast of Trumpets, the rapture, Feast of Atonement 7 years later is the second coming, and then the Feast of Tabernacles is the millennial kingdom. But anyway, in 2020, I was very concerned that if the rapture occurred soon, I wouldn't have time to write everything God had told me to write. On February 8, 2020, I was in prayer and the Lord spoke to me that the rapture would not take place before my 25th wedding anniversary. That's something I wanted to get through to you too. I knew my 25th wedding anniversary would I think he meant to say take place November 14th, 2025. That just happened a couple days ago, by the way. So I understood I still had time to write the words of God. God has been speaking to me to write. Whatever year the rapture takes place, God has revealed to me that 2 months after the rapture, the nuclear holocaust between America and Russia will take place as described in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 and Revelation chapter 6. The first nuclear exchange will occur on November 11, 2 months after the rapture. Okay? November 11th. I also understood that the rapture will take place according to the parameters of the Feast of Trumpets, which takes place each year between September 5 and October 5. But we don't know the exact year of the rapture. The rapture will take place. Then 2 months later, those who are left behind will experience nuclear holocaust. Revelation 6 is World War III. It is the same war referred to in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. This war takes place after the rapture of true believers have lived holy. I don't agree on that, but Revelation 6:8 says that in World War III, 1/4 of the people on earth will die. 1/4 of the world after the rapture means over 1.5 billion people will die in this nuclear holocaust. Thus saith the Lord, World War III will begin November 11 after the rapture of true believers. In Joel 2:30, in the Old Testament, God said, "And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke." And then he puts in quotes, nuclear explosions. "The sun shall be turned into darkness because of the smoke, and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and in the remnant among all nations, whom the Lord shall call." Next, I will tell of dreams, visions, and revelations from the Lord about the destruction of America on November 11th after the rapture by Russian nuclear missiles. In the first dream from the Lord, I was on an old red brick building around 5 stories high in downtown Mobile, Alabama. As I stood on the building, I saw Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles coming from north to south into American airspace from southern Canada. The missiles had come across the North Pole area. The missiles had been launched from Russia. The first missile destroyed Chicago, which will be the first American city to be destroyed in World War III. The second missile exploded high up in the upper atmosphere above Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Possibly this missile was detonated by being hit by a laser from the American defense system or some other American defense system, and the actual target of the missile wasn't Milwaukee. The third missile hit Detroit, Michigan. The fourth missile hit Cleveland, Ohio. Other missiles passed into American airspace, but then a Russian nuclear missile exploded over Canada north of Lake Michigan. It was hit by an American defense laser or some other American defense mechanism. Then many other Russian nuclear missiles exploded as they came into the blast percussion of the first exploded missile north of Lake Michigan. A massive geographical area was destroyed over Canada north of Lake Michigan from so many nuclear blasts caused by missiles, one after another exploding as they hit the blast percussion from other nuclear missiles that exploded over Canada north of Lake Michigan. But the missiles that had already passed into American airspace before the first missile exploded north of Lake Michigan kept coming. One missile hit Memphis, Tennessee, and then another hit Nashville. Then another hit St. Louis. Another was headed toward New Orleans, and another toward Little Rock, Arkansas. To the west, I saw 2 missiles that had passed into American airspace from north to south in a slightly east to west trajectory, headed toward Denver, Colorado, and another toward Albuquerque, New Mexico. All of these missiles had a long white plume of exhaust trailing behind them as they passed through American airspace. Years later, I stood in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and looked south. I think you meant north, toward Denver. But maybe the target of that missile was actually Colorado Springs, where the American Air Force Academy is located. But as I looked northward toward Denver, and I could see as the land descended toward Denver, God spoke to me and said, "No, the missile will hit Denver, not Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is not far south from Denver, so it will also be destroyed in the nuclear blast from the missile that hits Denver." In a second dream, which occurred a few years later, I had a dream where I saw two flights of medium-sized Russian jets in two formations. The first formation comprised of four jets broke into American airspace in the northeast part of America from the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know how they had been refueled to get from Russia to the northeastern American coast. This flight of four Russian jets each launched a nuclear missile. One missile destroyed Boston, Massachusetts. Two missiles hit New York City, and another missile destroyed Baltimore, Maryland. Then the scene changed in the dream, and I saw another flight of two Russian jets that were the same type planes as the first four planes. They were flying together and launched missiles against Washington, D.C. A few years later, I had a vision in the daytime of two Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles coming from north to south across eastern Canada. One hit Philadelphia, and the other ICBM missile hit New York City. In all the dreams and visions I had regarding the destruction of the northeastern United States, 3 nuclear missiles hit New York City, 2 hit Washington, D.C., and 1 hit Baltimore, 1 hit Boston, and 1 hit Philadelphia. This made a total of 2 ICBMs to hit the Northeast and 6 nuclear cruise missiles launched by Russian medium-range bombers. 8 nuclear bombs in total will hit the Northeast, destroying every northeastern state from Maine to South Central Virginia. 3 judgments against New York City. The triune Godhead, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, will not defend New York City, but will allow 3 nuclear missiles to hit the city because of their righteous indignation against the great sins of the city. The evil of New York City has grieved the Godhead for over 250 years, since before the Revolutionary War, since before George Washington was there with his troops and had to severely reprimand the city for its evil. Okay, so this goes on and on, but the main thing is I wanted to show you was this part about the cities that are going to get hit. Let me show you a representation of all our, in a screenshot. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is a screenshot from another brother's, I forget his name, from his YouTube channel, but he made this, and it's kind of basically describes what I just told you. These are the American cities that will be attacked by nuclear weapons: New York City, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, Albuquerque, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Memphis, Nashville, St. Louis, Denver, New Orleans, San Francisco, and Little Rock. 18 cities. And remember, there's going to be 3 of them hitting New York City and 2 of them hitting Washington, D.C. So he also, like I said, he said as well, and I'm going to show you this part where he talks about this, but he saw that there would be, prior to the rapture, probably in late May, early June of whichever year it's going to be, he saw the Psalm 83 war happen, which is when Isaiah 17 is going to be fulfilled as well. You remember in Isaiah 17:1 talks about the burden of Damascus, and Damascus is the longest and continually inhabited city of the world, but yet it's going to be a ruinous heap and taken away from being a city. That hasn't happened yet, but he believes that's when it's going to happen. There will be this Psalm 83 war, which will be Syria and some other nations that surround Israel, and that Israel will be hit by chemical weapons possibly, and react with the Samson option, which is nuclear. And when they do, and there's going to basically, Damascus is going to be taken away from being a city by way of a nuclear weapon. That's what he believes. Okay, that's what he's been shown, but I think that's what he was shown. But he believes that's what's going to happen, and that will happen. Like several months, a couple months before the rapture happens on the Feast of Trumpets. Now, if it happens in 2026, and that's what he's kind of leaning towards, since the Lord told him it wouldn't be until after his 25th wedding anniversary, which was just a couple days ago this year, that it would possibly happen at the Feast of Trumpets of 2026, the rapture of the church. So if that be the case, that means that we'd see a 2026 to 2033 timeline. So just less than a year away. But let me just show you what he said concerning that Psalm 83 war. Okay, so this video is from Mike Harris. This is Pastor Mike. He's kind of a good friend with Phillip Barnett. They've known each other for a long time. And he did this 4 years ago. So this was back in the COVID time frame in 2021 when he made this. So this is towards the end of it. This is when he talks about the Psalm 83 war, okay? So we're going to go ahead and watch this.
Is an image of the living God. And you know the date they want to have everybody vaccinated, that they can take control of the world, is 2030. If this war I'm talking about takes place in 2026, 3.5 years later, it would be the midpoint of the tribulation when the Antichrist breaks his peace treaty with Israel. And that is the date that Bill Gates and George Soros, they have set to take over the economies of the world, is in 2030. Midpoint of the tribulation, when the Antichrist breaks his peace treaty with Israel and attacks Israel. So what we're going to see next, though, that we can directly attribute scripturally to the rapture, civil war in Egypt. When the Edomites recognize, hey, the Muslim Brotherhood has taken over Egypt, they send out a secret ambassador to the nations around Israel. They attack Israel. Israel responds, counterattacks. It initiates the Samson option, destroys these nations, occupies these nations. Israel becomes a superpower in the Middle East, tears down the walls because they won't need them anymore. And then after the walls are torn down or partially torn down, Russia and its allies attack Israel. They are destroyed. 3.5 years later, the Antichrist, they make that peace treaty with Israel, but they immediately break. The Russians come against Israel, and there's a major nuclear war. Hundreds of millions of people will die, including Americans. And then the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist breaks the peace treaty. My guess would be around early 2030. And in 2033, it takes us to 2,000 years since Jesus died. 6,000 years, 2033, 6,000 years since God, according to the Jewish calendar, created the world. But 7 years before 2033, we've got 2026, 7 years before the tribulation period. I'm giving you a scenario. Don't go away and say, Philip said, God said on such. No. But I'm giving you a very, very likely scenario, because God is a God of organization. God is a God of mathematics. He doesn't haphazardly do anything. He has a plan, and he knew the beginning. He knew the end from the beginning. Folks, whatever the date is, we're getting close. And the things that are happening now, it should cause us to fall on our knees and make sure our hearts are right before Jesus Christ.
Okay, so there you go. So that was like a highlights of a pre-rapture events that on Mike Harris's channel. He's like I said, he's done other interviews with Phillip Barnett also concerning both the Azovmena prophecy. It's hard to say, and the Remnant of America prophecy. So anyway, let me go back to, let's do one more thing and then we'll end this. Okay, so this is just a screenshot from the video where he actually went and gave basically the entire remnant of America prophecy. And he just did that back in August of this year. Now, he's had since then with another man, I forget his name, on YouTube. He had another interview with this man recently, like in October. And they talked about Joshua. And, Philip said, not taking anything away from Joshua, but I could have told him because I knew the Lord told me that it wouldn't happen until after his 25th wedding anniversary on November 14th of 2025. So that's what we're looking at, folks. I don't know whether he's completely right or not. I have no idea. I'm just telling you, I'm just showing you this information that he's given. And like I said, he was right concerning the war between Russia and Ukraine, and he was given that dream in 2007. And he could be right about this as well. The Psalm 83 war would be the next event, and then the rapture, and then World War III, basically Ezekiel 38 and 39. So the question is, will it happen in 2026, or is it wait later than that? I think concerning, if we're going by the 2,000 years from the time of Jesus' crucifixion until his second coming, if it's exactly 2,000 years, and we don't know exactly what year Jesus was crucified, we're just guessing it was either 32. Now we're thinking 33, could be 32, could be 33. And I know for a fact that in history, Pontius Pilate, his governance over Judea ended in, I think, 36 AD. So, yeah, couldn't be too much far off. If the Lord is going to do it exactly 2,000 years later, basically if the end of his second coming, or the end of the 70th week of Daniel is 2,000 years after his crucifixion, then we can't be too far off. Whether it's 2026, 2027, 2028, whenever. It can't be too much further before that actually happens. So I just wanted to give this to you to think about. I would like to think that we still had time in 2025, but I think that we've gone past a lot of the markers that we looked at. Some people might be looking now towards Hanukkah. But I think that in order to fit the 7 years in between now and the Feast of Atonement, which would be the fulfillment of the second coming, I think we've gone past that time period now in 2025, unfortunately. And now I'm looking at what he's saying, and he's saying, not until after, he didn't say when, how far after, but after his 25th wedding anniversary, that the rapture would happen. That's what the Lord told him. So either this man is really did receive this from the Lord, and apparently he did concerning the war between Russia and Ukraine. So with that, I'm going to say bye for now. Keep looking up.